always, welcome to the podcast. This is Big Reptile Talk. I'm super excited about today's podcast. There is police involved, but you got to stick around for that. We'll talk about that later. So before we get started, as always, much love. We want to give a few shout outs to the podcast sponsors. So let's pull that up. If you're in the ball pythons, Ozzy Boys. He produces some of the best ball pythons in the world. So please hit him up if you're thinking about getting something. He's got a little bit of everything, something for everybody. And if you keep snakes the right way. Keep them responsibly, venom-proof cages. Keep your snakes in style. One of the dopest cages around. Make sure you check them out. Shout out to that company. Man, now, forget that. We ain't playing no more intros and playing none of that. We're going to get into this podcast, man, because I'm a big fan of Wildfire Retics, Mr. Weston, man. And when I heard his story, I was just like, I got to talk to this man because his story is insane. But we're going to talk about that a little later. We're just going to kind of get a little knowledge and have a little fun. And then we're going to talk about his story. Let's give a few shout outs to the people that did, that showed up early. My dog, Iron Dog Retics. He likes big snakes. He has a few Retics. Shout out to Ozak, Cold Blooded Monstars. Everybody's showing up. Bosa Balls. He's doing some amazing stuff, man. Y'all make sure you go give him a follow. Kara Shea. Much love to Kara Shea. You always showing up. Cat Eyes. I appreciate you for showing up. Everybody that's showing up, thank you so much. Let's bring the guests in. Mr. Weston. How you doing today, brother?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Excited to have you here, man, because like I said, your story is incredible.
Thank you, man. I sincerely appreciate that. I appreciate you reaching out to ask me to be on here. You've had some big names on here. So I'm compared to the guys you've had on here, I'm just a newcomer, man. I'm still a rookie compared to all the guys you've had on here. So
I'm still excited. Thank you for that. Let's dive right into it, man. Most people, they end up ball pythons. They into the smaller snakes. Why Retics? What made you say this is a species that I want to work with?
All right. So history. I've been keeping and catching reptiles since I was a kid, right? I grew up in the country and I would run around and catch frogs and toads and lizards and whatever garter snakes I could find as a kid. I'd keep them in shoe boxes in my closet. Drove my parents absolutely crazy, right? Because they were not about any of it. I was never allowed to keep a snake when I was little. My dad, to this day, my old man hates snakes. Like, he doesn't even want to come in my facility. And so it wasn't really till I got to college. My first real snake as a pet was a ball python, like a lot of people. Some buddies of mine, I went to school in South Florida. But some buddies of mine had a ball python that they kept in a cage out on their lanai, just kept it outdoors. And every time I went over to their house for, whatever reason, I was taking care of it, taking it out, messing with it. And one day they just called me. They're like, "Hey, man, we don't want this snake anymore. Do you want it? Just come get it." Cool. Done. So I went and got it. And that was my first ball python. I'm a little bit older. So, when I was into reptiles, the only real place of classifieds that existed were fauna classifieds and king snake, the classifieds on king snake. And I discovered those. And it just kind of went from there. And I started getting more ball pythons. And then I got into boa constrictors for a bit. Then I got some berms. And like I said, I went to school in Southwest Florida. I went to school about 20 minutes from Glades Herp. Those that have been around for a long time know who Glades Herp was. And so I was going up and hanging out at the shop with Robbie and those guys for quite a while. That's how I got into hots. So when I was in my early 20s, I kept venomous. I had copperheads. I had cobras. I had a breeding pair of gaboon vipers. I had an eastern green mamba. Like, I had a whole bunch of different stuff. I wasn't really breeding much of anything. I was really just collecting, but my house really looked like a zoo. And around the end of my college career, I got really into dogs. So I spent about a decade breeding and running breeding pit bulls and running a full-time kennel called Lionsgate Kennels. And I had to make a choice when I really kind of dove into the dogs. It was either the dogs or the reptiles. I couldn't do both. I didn't have the time, and I chose the dogs. So I got completely out of reptiles for over a decade. I didn't have one single snake, anything. And when I moved to Colorado in early 2013, I'd always wanted a retic, right? Back in the early 2000s when I was in reptiles before, the only guys that really had retics were Bob, Jay, like very few guys even had them. And an albino retic back then was like a $5,000 snake, and I had no business spending $5,000 on on a snake back then. And so when I moved to Colorado in early 2013, and I had a lot more time, and obviously I was grown up, and money was a lot better, and so it was like, you know what, I always wanted a retic. I'm going to get one, and so the only place I knew to go, go look for snakes, same place, king snake. So I went back on the king snake classifieds. Found a guy out of Wisconsin that was selling a purple albino. It was sold to me as a male. It was definitely not a male. It was a female. And I got that one purple albino retic, and it just kind of went from there, man. I had that one snake for 4.5 years. That was the only snake, only retic that I had. And then unfortunately there was an accident. I live in the Western United States in the mountains. When the weather gets cold, sometimes things can happen, snowstorms and whatnot. And unfortunately I ended up losing that snake. I was out of town, and power went out and nobody was there, and the snake ended up passing away. And that kind of spurred me. Like I wanted another retic, right? And at that point, I had discovered the Facebook groups, and this is back when there were all the classified groups on Facebook for all kinds of reptiles, retics especially. And I discovered all the different morphs and all the different genetics, and it was like, whoa. And I went from 0 retics to 16 retics in about 16 weeks. And like it just like literally, and that's where I came up with the name Wildfire Retics, because when I got into retics, it spread like wildfire. Like my passion for it, my interest in it, it just went boom. And so all of a sudden I had all these snakes, and a year later I'm looking around and I'm like, okay, I need to start doing something with these. And so I bought some retics from some really well-known guys in the industry, and I started talking to them and learning, how to get into breeding, what I needed to do. One of the guys in particular, Paul Lucas, he's become, one of my absolute best friends in the world. He single-handedly taught me more about retics than anybody else. And it has truly helped me form Wildfire Retics into what it is today. But yeah,
do you feel like Paul Lucas was your mentor? I didn't
absolutely, no question, 0 question, 100%. That's like, I can't tell you how many hours of time I've spent on the phone with Paul. Don't get me wrong, I've had other guys that absolutely helped me out as well. But, and I said this on an interview on Retic Radio not that long ago, without Paul Lucas, there would never have been a Wildfire Retics, straight up. There just wouldn't have been. Yeah, that's kind of how that's why retics. And when people ask that question now, like why retics, honestly, because I've kept everything else, including hots. And to me, the only snake I've never kept that I want to keep is a king cobra. That's the only one I've never had a king, and I don't know if I ever will have one. If you follow me, you know that my fiance is deathly afraid of all of the snakes. And videos like the one I posted today of my wild caught Bhutan do not help her fear at all. And so when she sees stuff like that, she's just like, no, you're not getting a cobra. Like there's just no chance. It's not happening. So we'll see if that ever happens. I don't know. Besides the king, man, like I've kept everything. I've kept everything I want to keep. And retics, to me, they're the most intelligent. They have the most personality. Their patterns and colors. Dude, I've got a clutch out here now of just normals. I've got 27 normals in a baby rack, and the variation in colors and patterns and everything else just in normals is mind-blowing. And to me, retics are it, man. So
right, I feel you, bro. I feel you, man. My Animal House, thank you so much for that super chat. Y'all make sure you go check him out. What's up, Fungus Queen? Thank you for showing up, man. You've been in the game so long, man. So I want to know, like, how long have you actually been breeding? Around what time frame?
I've only been breeding for 4 years. So I dropped my first clutch in 2018, and I still have actually posted a video of the girl not too long ago. So I kept my very first clutch I ever did with a buddy of mine, Jaden Hartman, who lives out in Oklahoma now. He was in Colorado at the time. We used his big female tiger and my big old Sunfire male. So I had, still to this day, it's one of the biggest males I've ever seen. He's about 14 and a half, almost 15 feet, big, old Sunfire. And we bred him to that tiger. I still have one of the snakes out of that clutch. So she was actually the runt of the clutch. She had hard belly as a baby. Literally my first clutch, she had hard belly. I saved her from that. Still have her today. Her name's Puzzle Piece. She just turned 4 years old in April. So yeah, man, I've not been breeding that long. To be perfectly honest, like a lot of people think I've been breeding a lot longer than I have because of the collection that I have and because of what I've been able to produce. But that was simply I brought expertise into breeding. Like breeding retics is not my first realm of breeding animals. And so when it came time to like actually understand how to run a breeding program, I already knew how to do that. I didn't have to figure that out. And I got some really great advice from some really great guys coming into things. And one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was breed for what you love. Don't try to chase the market, breed for what you love. And if people like it, cool. And if they don't, then, you'll just end up with a bunch of really cool snakes. And that's still always been, my guiding principle. I breed stuff, number one, for what I like. And number two, I breed healthy stuff. Like, I'm not trying to chase the newest fad or the newest morph. I don't inbreed at all. And so as far as a breeding program, and the luxury that I have with my program, and I've said this a lot, like, this is not what I do for a living. This is my hobby. This is a passion. Like, I don't rely on these animals to put food on my table. And that gives me a freedom that isn't afforded to a lot of other breeders.
Right. I love it, man. Now, who are some of your, before we could talk about favorite breeders, I want to go back to the King Cobra. Something that I wanted to, a snake. You know what somebody told me? Because, I have a beautiful wife as well. Someone told me it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission.
Yeah, bro, I live by that. And let me tell you what, that right there, that is a situation where that is not going to fly. I can promise you, like, the day she comes into the shop and she sees, and she's observant enough to realize that a venomous cage would look a whole lot different. She sees that, she's just going to be like, no, dude, no, just you've lost your fucking mind. Excuse my language.
Right. That, there's so many, original, breeders, OGs in the game that's been dealing with big snakes for years. Like I said, you got Bob Clark, you got Jay Brewer, you got tons of other bigger breeders. So my question to you is kind of like a hot seat question. Who's your that's my wife right there, smart man. Who's your favorite, current favorite breeder right now, retic wise?
I mean, dude, there's so most of the guys that I look up to in the retic world are friends of mine. So I mean, Shane Costello at SC Constrictors, Shane crushes it, dude. Like, there are people in the industry that swear he's got a Lucky Charm shoved up his butt, just because of how many things he hits and how great his outcomes are with his breedings. But the thing I respect about Shane the most is his work ethic. That dude works, and like, he puts in the time, he does what has to be done, and he gets rewarded for it. It's as simple as that. So I really dig what he's doing. I mean, again, Paul Lucas, he's kind of out of the game. Like, he really hasn't been into the retics the last couple of years. But the thing about Paul that I've always respected is that Paul, he adhered to a lot of the same principles that I do, and he bred for what he liked. And he also, like, when he did a breeding, he did it to create animals the way they should look. Like, and I catch flack for this, but I say it all the time. Like, there are very few breeders in this industry that have purple albinos that look the way that they should, period. There's a lot of washed out, just like half-ass looking purples out there. And the guys that do it right, the guys that have them and do it right, like, they stand out. Like, the animals stand out. That, like, the lineage, you can see it as soon as someone posts a picture. And so, like, there are definitely guys that I respect out there. Like Aaron Green, he's a newcomer, Morphmatic. But I respect what Aaron's doing a lot. He's got a lot of high quality animals. And again, he's putting in the time and the effort, and he's breeding for what he loves. And that's what it comes down to, man, is the guys that I respect are the ones that are doing it right. And some people will be like, oh, who judge who does it right? Well, there's a right way and a wrong way to do everything. There just is. And again, I don't judge people for how they want to make a living, and people want to breed for a living. That's on them. I don't judge on that. At the same time, what I will say is, like, there are guys that are just pumping out animals for the sake of pumping out animals, or they're just so crazy chasing the newest thing or the hottest new combination that they're losing sight of the fact that, like, you still need to aim to produce a quality animal, because you are dealing with a life. Like, you're creating life. That's what we're doing when we're breeding, right? And the majority of the animals that we produce are not going to other breeders. They're going to pet owners, right? And
Right.
like, that's a big thing for me that carried over from the dogs. Like, snake might not necessarily be considered a family member to somebody, but it's still a pet to most people. I want to provide people with a pet that's going to live like many, many years and be healthy and not be riddled and having to go to the vet all the time with all these issues, right? And there's a lot of guys out there, unfortunately, that I don't think adhere to those principles. And I'm not one to talk shit on other people. Like, again, everybody does what they do. But the guys that I look up to and that I respect are the guys that are doing it right.
Right. That's what it is. That's what it's about, man. Doing something and just doing it right, man. Now, being, part of the retic community, and, you are breeding them. My question to you is, do you think that, owning a retic, that, you either have that knowledge, or not necessarily knowledge, but let me reword this. Do you feel like hook and ball training is necessary when it comes to retics?
I don't necessarily know that it's necessary. So this is what I tell people all the time when they come to me and they're a potential first time retic buyer, right? I ask them first, what's your experience with big snakes, right? Because if you have zero experience with big snakes, a retic is probably not generally like the first big snake I would recommend for people. It just isn't, for a multitude of reasons. If somebody at least has big snake experience, the thing that I always tell them is buy a hatchling, right? And the reason for that is that hatchling's not going to be 12 feet in 6 months. That snake is going to grow in accordance with how you feed it, in accordance with what you feed it, and your knowledge is going to grow with the snake. So in 2 to 3 years, which, again, unless you're just hammering a snake, by the time it hits 10, 12, 13 feet, you're going to know that animal, right? You're going to know its behaviors. You're going to know its cues and how it's acting, and know how to read that animal, versus, I think one of the worst things in the world is an inexperienced keeper that goes out and buys an adult retic, whether it's 8 feet or it's 15 feet. I just think it's a bad idea. And so, as far as like the hook training, excuse me, I still use a hook on certain retics. I still use a hook not only for tap training, but when I'm actually handling them. Again, that video I posted today on my wild caught Bhutan, that snake is not handleable. He's not handleable, like, unless I manhandle him, and I really, really don't want to do that. And so the hook is what I use to try and work with that animal. So do I recommend it? Yeah, I recommend it. Is it necessary? I don't necessarily think it's necessary. It also depends on the animals. It really depends on the animals you're dealing with. I'll leave it at that.
Well, I agree with what you're saying. And like you were talking about, a lot of the newbies, how you kind of vet them before you sell them something. Do you feel like, to me, I can go to a reptile show, I can go to a reptile store and buy a retic without the knowledge. So my question to you, like you were talking about the newbies, do you feel like, because the market is so free right now, do you feel like retics should still be freely purchased, or do you think they should be like regulated? Like, you should have like a class or something before you're able to buy it so freely?
I mean, I that's a slippery slope. Okay. And here's why I say that. I don't think, I think, so I'll say this much. I have sold, in all my years of breeding, I've sold one retic to somebody under 18. They came with their parents. I had a long conversation with them. Everything seemed legit. And within 6 months, they were selling the snake. So lesson learned on me, I will not sell to somebody that's under 21 years old. I just won't do it. I don't care what your situation is. I don't care if you bring your parents. Like, I'm just not doing it. As far as like a licensing or something like that, then you start to get into the same thing as venomous, right? And like having venomous licenses and stuff like that. And here's the tricky part with that. There aren't that many people that keep retics that have the time, the energy, or the ability to train somebody on how to keep retics, right? Now, so like I have 2 employees that work with me here at Wildfire, and they come in twice a week. They had prior reptile experience. They didn't have any retic experience, but they had prior reptile experience. Now, and I spent extensive time with them, teaching them how to work with my snakes and how to work with retics, and they learn, they've learned a lot, and they do fantastic. At the same time, like same thing. When I went to buy a retic, right? I had venomous experience. I'd never worked with retics, but I'd worked with cobras. I kept gaboon vipers. Like those are more deadly than a retic. They just are, right? And so it's like if I had to go get a license to get a retic, it would have been like, yeah, this doesn't make a lot of sense, right? And so that's where I just don't think a retic should be somebody's first snake. That's what I think. Like,
right.
And that I think comes down to, again, it comes down to breeders. Like breeders need to have some ethics. They need to have, a code that they kind of stick to in terms of whom they will sell to. Same thing. Like, and some people say I'm an asshole for it, and that's fine. But like, if I don't offer payment plans on snakes under $1,000, I don't. And reason being, if you need a payment plan on a snake under $1,000, you can't afford it. And that's like, and some people say that I'm, that's not right, that I'm just drawn too hard of a line, but flat out, that's how I feel. Like if you can't afford the animal, then, short of a payment plan, then you shouldn't be buying it. Right.
Right.
And that's, I think that's where come in. It should fall to the breeders. And again, I know plenty of breeders that won't sell to certain people or won't sell to certain people, like certain, anybody under 21, 18, whatever. And I think that's just really what it comes down to, is the breeders have to have discretion.
Right. I definitely agree. Shout out to Daily Tarantula Girl. She said, our Slayer is not handleable. Definitely needed a hook for him.
I get it. Yeah.
Now I gotta ask, man. I seen that reel you posted today on IG, bro, where that snake was literally it was more like defensive, lunging at you. It was amazing, and it leads me to my next question, man. Having bigger snakes, what's the worst bite you ever took?
Worst bite I ever took was from a male, and I misjudged. It was in 2018. I was doing a breeding, and I misjudged, and I didn't read his behavior right, and he got me right here on the arm. It was before I had all the tattoos on this arm, thank God. And he laid me open. He just point blank, he laid me open. Other than that, I'm gonna say lucky. I'm also, because of my time, I attribute my ability to not, like, when it comes to babies, I don't care. Babies can bite me, even snakes, that are juveniles up to like a year old. I'll take a bite and I really don't care. When we start talking about larger snakes, it's not even that I'm afraid to take a bite. Like, I don't want to. I don't think any of us want to. At the same time, like, my time with venomous, like, I am very, very, like, I want to say on point, but my reaction time still stays with me. There's still a little bit in my head, like this little thing in my head. It's like, if you get bit, you might die. Right. And like, that's carried over from the venomous stuff. And so I've just been in some ways lucky, and in other ways, I just also don't put myself in situations where getting bit is a likelihood. Right. Like, I don't feed half my collection and then go handle, a snake. Like, when I'm feeding. And literally, I won't touch a single snake in my collection for a couple of days after I feed, just because the smell's still in the building. Like, and accidents happen. I also, like I said, I don't put myself in the situation to get bit. Like, there's a video that's gone around for a long time now, this woman just getting straight smashed by a retic because she opens the cage. It comes out. It's very clearly looking for food. And she sticks her arm out. And it's like, what did you expect? Like, that you were going to get bit. And it's stuff like that. Like, I just don't do that, and that's where hooks, that's where hooks are your friend, man. And that's why, to this day, I've got hooks all over my facility. Like, and when I open a cage, there's certain snakes, don't get me wrong, certain snakes I can open the cage and I can tap them and move them and like not use a hook and it's cool. And there's other snakes that I would never ever do that with because I know they're going to tag me, period.
Right.
So, and that's I always give the analogy like this. If somebody came into your home unannounced, uninvited, and just started poking at you, what would you do? You'd start swinging or grab them up and like throw them out your house. Whereas somebody came and like knocked on your door, hey, how are you? And like maybe, walked up and just tapped on your shoulder like, hey man, how are you? You'd be like, oh, what's up, bro? Okay, what's going on?
Silly, man. I love it, man. Now you said you've been breeding for a little over 4 years, man. So I want to ask, what do you think has been the hardest part of breeding? These are huge snakes. So what's been the hardest part for you?
Hardest part for me in some ways has been cycling. So I live at a higher elevation than any other retic breeder in the country. I live at 7,200 feet. There used to be one other breeder in Colorado that lived at about 8,000 feet. I know her. Her name's Casey Ray. She runs Sangre de Serpent. And we've had a lot of conversations about it. The elevation definitely adds an element to things when it comes to breeding retics. These snakes are sea level rainforest animals. And I live in the high desert. The climate could not be more opposite. And so that's definitely been a tricky thing for me, for sure. For instance, in 2020, when I moved out here to Utah from Colorado, I didn't have a breeding season. Like nothing bred for me because of the move and the elevations and stuff like that. So that's certainly been a little tricky. Other than that, I don't know, man. I mean, dealing with a male retic in breeding mode it's never a walk in the park. It's never a picnic. But again, it's just something you learn how to deal with and you learn how to navigate and learn how to do it safely. But that is absolutely the most dangerous time to work with these snakes. Besides when you're trying to grab the eggs, the breeding time, getting the male out of the cage and trying to get the eggs from the mom. But even getting the eggs from the mom, I have not had a ton of issues with that. I generally try to time it with that where like they're just coming off of finishing laying and they're pretty tired and I'm usually able to get them out of there pretty easily. Never taken a bite yet from pulling eggs. So, other than, like I said, probably just getting things dialed in with my climate and whatnot, it's probably been my most difficult thing.
Right. Now, since we're talking about eggs and snakes in heat and wanting to mate and breed or whatever you say, whatever you mean, my question to you is, I don't know if you're familiar with another retic keeper, and when I was watching some of his YouTube videos, it kind of scared me. I was like, oh no, retics are not for me. Like I would tell you who it was. I don't know if you ever heard of him. Have you ever heard of him? He's on YouTube, Dr. Thick.
I haven't actually. Mm-mm.
You need to look him up. He's a big retic keeper, and he's got like I think 40,000 subs on YouTube. And he made a YouTube video, and he was showing his male snake that was wanting to breed, and it was literally lunging at him. I said, "Oh no!"
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean that's real, dude. Like when you go, I'm not gonna say all of them, and this is why. So they're certainly not all. But there's a good portion of retic breeders that purposely keep their males small for exactly this reason. Like they don't want to deal with a big, angry male in breeding mode. And I get it. I understand because I have a couple of big males and when they're in breeding mode or let alone battle mode, that video I posted today, that can be any male straight up. It can be. It's not common. Like that doesn't happen often. But it definitely can happen. And I've had it happen with other breeder males before. So yeah, I mean, it's funny because retic keepers are always kind of looked at like, what's wrong with you? Like even within the reptile industry, right? Like we're kind of like, we're those guys people will walk through and people are just like, there's something not right with that dude. Like there's something wrong with him. And videos like I posted today kind of give truth to that, I guess. So
you see the videos, you're like, oh no. Now, I gotta ask, man, and I hate to cut you off, but I want to know, man. I want to give you a couple hot seat questions just to have a little fun. I kind of do this in my podcast. So the first hot seat question, man, you're breeding retics, and if you could make a celebrity sale, if you could sell a snake to any celebrity, who would you like to sell a retic?
Man, I genuinely don't know, man. Like, I don't. I'm gonna be honest. Like, I don't really get caught up in like celebrity, like status, like stuff like that. Like, I when I was breeding dogs, I sold some dogs to some celebrities, musicians, stuff like that. I mean, I guess I'm just not really that. I'm not a starstruck person, man. Like, celebrities, pro athletes, whatever, they're people. Like, they're people just like you and me. And I've got some friends that are ex-pro athletes and whatnot, and they're some of the most down to earth, just like chill people ever. And so I don't know if there's anyone like, that I'd be like, oh, I'd love to sell him an animal. Like, if any celebrity came to me and wanted a snake, like straight up, I would vet them the same way I do any other buyer. Like, just because they're a celebrity, I wouldn't just sell them a snake. So that's kind of my answer is I don't know.
Okay. That's cool. Answer. No right or wrong answer. Now, here's next question. Hot seat question. You only have one life jacket, and there's two people drowning. You can only save one person. Who are you going to save? Joe Exotic or Carol Baskin?
Joe Exotic all day. Joe Exotic all day. Not even. That's not even a question. Straight up.
I love it, man. That's actually who I'm gonna save too, man. Free my boy Joe Exotic. Now, I want to get back to
look, and that's not an endorsement either way, but I'm sure that what we all saw in the Netflix documentary is skewed in a whole bunch of ways. But I don't know, man. I don't get a good feeling from Carol Baskin whatsoever. So no, I'm going Joe Exotic all day.
I love it, man. That's hilarious, bro. Now, being a lot of new people getting into the game and wanting, I want you to talk to the people that, want to follow in your footsteps. They want to keep retics. They want to breed retics. I want you to, talk about that food bill, man, because for me, I have like 6 or 7 snakes and I hate buying rats. I couldn't imagine feeding retics. Are you feeding, large rats? Are you feeding small pigs? Talk about that food bill. How atrocious is it?
My food bill runs in excess of $1,000 a month, straight up. That's just where it is. The majority of my food bill is rabbits, followed second by pigs. There's a few goats in there as well. I actually feed unless I literally have like when it's breeding season and I've got hatchlings coming up. That's the only time I'm really running through rats, man. Like, I move my retics off of rats as soon as possible. Straight up. Rats are not a sustainable food source for retics. There are dudes out there that will disagree with me. That's fine. Like, I move my retics off of rats as soon as possible. Like, I'll start feeding them rabbit pinkies. My favorite, straight up, one of my favorite mid-level foods for retics is guinea pigs. One of the best feeder foods there is. In terms of bone density, fat content, like, guinea pigs are like superfood for retics because you can smash them in there and they'll run through them and they just grow. But yeah, I mean, again, my food bill is excessive because I have a lot of large snakes. Like, when I feed all of my snakes, I run through 35 to 42 rabbits in a rip, and all of those rabbits are at least 4 pounds. Like, so when I'm running through, it's that's part of why. So as far as people keeping, wanting to keep retics, you can keep a couple retics and it's not that bad. Like, it's not, crazy unreasonable to keep a couple retics. You want to breed retics? Yeah, it's a whole different ballgame, man. It just is because, and again, it comes down to how you're going to run your program. I almost never breed a female back to back. Like, I breed them, they get a year off. I breed them, they get a year off. And so if I'm consistently trying to keep hatchlings, let's say I want to do 3 to 4 clutches a year, I need at least 8 breeder females. And a breeder female to me has got to be at least 13 feet long. Now, again, I'm also different. I'm in the minority of the retic world, because while most retic guys are trying to breed dwarf and super dwarf blood and bring things like down in size, I'm going the exact opposite way. I'm trying to bring it back. I'm trying to bring the size back. Like I was blessed a couple of years ago to get a true giant into my possession. I didn't raise her. She wasn't my snake for all that long. Her name was Nefertiti. You know, anyone that's followed me for a while has seen footage of her. Neffy was measured by Colorado State University. She was 21 and a half feet long, and she weighed 222 pounds at her biggest. That snake changed the way I looked at even at retics. Owning an animal like that, it's almost an indescribable experience. Like, you're working with what is truly an apex prehistoric animal that can easily kill you, and you know that they know that. Like, you know that you just have this sense. You know they can kill you if they want to, and building the rapport and having the trust with that animal is an experience like no other. I honestly compare it to like keeping big cats. People that keep lions and tigers and stuff like that, I think they can relate. Otherwise, I don't know if you can. And so, yeah, like I'm in the minority in the retic world, because that's what I want my whole collection to be. Like, one day my collection will be much smaller, but every snake in it will be 18 foot plus. Like, that's where I'm going. And most guys are not trying to do that.
That's incredible, man. I love it, man. Now, we're gonna come back to the snakes, man, because you know they're amazing. Your collection is incredible. But I want to give you a hot seat question. If anybody knows you, they know you've had an incredible life. So I know you don't like celebrities, but I'm still asking. If we were to make a movie about your life, Wildfire, Retics, or you know the man from Colorado, who would I cast? What actor would I cast to play you in the movie?
That's a really good question. If I had to pick an actor, I would probably say Charlie Hunnam.
Damn, I wrote down. I wrote down Jason Statham.
Dude, look, Jason Statham's way more badass than me. Straight up, that dude is a hard man, and I like that. That would be cool, but like, that dude's way more badass than I am. So point blank.
Now, I say that and I know you talked about this on another podcast, but it intrigued me. Your life has been insane, man. So I want to rewind it, because you're in Colorado. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of people don't know you had a facility. You were I want to say medical marijuana, right?
Yeah. So that's what I do for a living, man. This is my company. If I can pull, that's all. Yeah, there we go. This is my company now. I've been in cannabis for almost 2 decades. Yes, since long before it was ever legal. That has been my other passion. When I was in my early 20s and I was breeding pit bulls, I flat out said my dream, my dream job, as it were, was to breed pit bulls and grow pot. So, and I've done both of those things, done them both at the same time. But yeah, I ran a medical marijuana cultivation operation in Colorado for almost 8 years. It was my own operation. I built it from the ground up. And the only reason that I can't say the only reason, but the main reason that it got shut down is because the federal government had a big problem with what I was doing, and they came in and said, you're breaking federal law and you're going to pay for it.
Hold on. Let's pause that. You had a facility. You were doing what you got to do. You're in Colorado. You doing business. And the federal government came in. So let's talk. And I've seen this, and I was like, oh my God. Let's talk about how it happened. You were at home. Now you tell the story.
I wasn't at home, no, man. So I mean, it's like an hour-long story. So I'm going to synopsis it, just like, and if anybody wants to go see it, like it's there. There's a couple podcasts out there that I've talked about the entire story on. Long story short, in 2018. My facility, my house, every every piece of property I was involved in was rated by the federal government and by the state of Colorado. I got roped into a RICO case with 11 other people. I got hit with 7 felony charges. I got locked up on a $500,000 bond. They literally took everything from me at one point. My cash, my guns, my vehicles, my four-wheelers, like anything that had value to it, they took it. And I spent 13 months in a really horrific legal battle with the federal government and the state of Colorado. I settled the case. I took a plea bargain. I pled guilty to cultivation over 30 plants in a state where cannabis is supposed to be legal. That's a 3rd-degree felony. I'm a convicted felon, and I paid the federal government $211,000 to get all of my property and everything back.
Mr. Weston, your life is incredible. I love it.
Thank you, man. So what's interesting, like what I will talk about, that's really where like Wildfire Retics was born out of.
Yeah.
That experience in 2018. Yeah. So when I got hit in 2018, I had no idea what was going to happen because it wasn't like I got hit and I got arrested. I got raided, and then for 8 weeks, there was nothing. Nothing. There was no indictments. There was no nothing. It was just like, what are we doing? Like, what am I supposed to do with my life? Because my life was literally growing cannabis,
right.
And my operation got completely not just hit, but dismantled. They took all my lights. They cut down all my plants. They took every piece of grow equipment. Like, they wiped me out. So,
and that's where the snakes came in. You're like, I want to do something different. I want to not necessarily different, but
I needed something to take my mind off of what was going on, especially once the indictments came down. At one point, I was facing up to 32 years in prison. And
God damn.
I needed something to take my mind off of it, dude. Like, I needed something to do. And like, I was already in the gym, like doing the whole physical fitness thing, but that wasn't enough. And so going over every single day and working with my snakes and cleaning them and taking care of them, like that became like my solace. It was like the one part of my world that I still had complete control over, that nobody could mess with. Because that's the only thing, when the feds in the state came in, the only thing they didn't mess with were my snakes. They didn't touch them.
I hate to interrupt you, but you know something? Being in the reptile hobby, I'm in the reptile hobby, and shout out to my wife. She has emotional support animals, her dog. But you know something? Snakes can be emotional support animals too, because when you're with them, it just takes your mind off that negative shit, don't it?
It does. It does, man. It gave me an outlet, and that's really where Wildfire Retics was born out of, because that's all I did. Like, for really almost all of 2018. I started another side business just to, bring income in, but that really was what I did to like keep myself straight while everything else was going on.
Right. Now we get back to the snakes, man. I want to have a little fun. I want to give you a couple of hot seat questions.
Okay.
Now, we all love the big dogs in the hobby. We know Brian Barczyk, we know Jay Brewer, we know all the big dogs. So my question to you, you're part of the retic community. So in your mind, who would be the Brian Barczyk of the retic community?
I mean, that's difficult to say. Like, I mean, it probably Jay, right? Because Jay's known worldwide, obviously, but I mean, Jay was one of the first guys keeping and breeding retics in the country. He and Bob, like they were some of the pioneers. So I mean, in terms of like, who Brian is in terms of a personality and and notoriety and all that, I would say it's got to be Jay.
Right. I love it, man. Now, I'm going to give you another hot seat question, but my question to you, having all these big snakes, did you ever have doubt, like, okay, maybe I can't take care of these snakes? And if you did, what made you push through and just keep doing it anyway?
Dude, there have been more times that I can count that I'm like, screw all of this. I'm selling them all. I am done, right?
Right.
I think every keeper, let alone breeder, has those days. It just happens. When I came out of everything in 2019, I almost immediately jumped into a partnership running a hemp farm in southern Utah. And when I engaged in that partnership, I knew I was about to spend a lot of time out of town. And so I hired people right then and there to come in and help me with my snakes. The biggest reason I would ever get out of or like severely reduce the quantity of animals that I keep is if I felt I wasn't giving them the proper care or husbandry, if the snakes weren't being kept in excellent health and conditions, that's why I would downsize. I'm sure there will come a point at some point where I say, okay, this is enough. And look, I've hit that. Like at one point I had 160 retics. That was insane. That was crazy. And I'm down to around 50, 55 now. And that's pretty manageable, but I've even got some plans to pare it down a little bit more over the next season, just because I'm really starting to hone in on some specific projects and stuff like that. But yeah, man, the only reason I would like, my biggest thing is the standard of care. Like my collection's healthy. That's why people ask me all the time, why do you do so many videos? One, I feel like video shows more, like people get to learn more from video. Number two, I got nothing to hide. Like I have nothing to hide in my facility. Like I know the standards that I adhere to and that I keep my animals at, and I'm proud of that. And I'm not necessarily trying to like rub it in people's faces, but I want people to see like you can keep this many retics and do it right and keep them healthy and keep them clean. It's possible. It takes a lot of work, takes a lot of money, but it can be done.
Right. Now, what do you think? Let's pretend that every single retic keeper in the world was right now listening to this podcast. What's one thing you would tell all retic keepers worldwide?
Up your standards. Straight up. Like part of the reason why we, especially large constrictor, and this goes across, this is for berm keepers, anaconda keepers, part of the reason why we're always at risk of losing our rights, not necessarily to keep these animals, but to breed and sell them, is because there are too many people within the industry that don't do it right. They don't adhere to a high enough standard. They don't keep their animals in the proper care. And that gets out there. Like there's a reason that there's this stigma, right, on the reptile industry as a whole, but especially on big snake keepers. And it has to do not with the animals, but with the people. And that's just a fact, man. And that's all I would say. So, if everyone upped their standards and did things to the highest level possible, we wouldn't have a lot of these problems that we have.
Right. That totally makes sense, man. I love it, man. Now I'm gonna give you a hot seat question just to have a little fun, man. You have an amazing facility. So I want you to think hard about this question. Let's say you had to spend a night alone and you had to survive. Who would you want to spend the night with? I'm old school, so Hellraiser or Jason? Who would you want to spend the night and try and see if you can survive with in your facility?
I'm gonna say Jason, dude. I'm gonna say Jason, like just that silent killer type. Let's go.
Yeah, I don't think I want to mess with Hellraiser either because he had a lot of people with him. Yeah. He had a lot of goals. You remember Hellraiser?
Oh yeah, I remember Hellraiser. Hell yeah.
Hey, that shit scared the shit out of me when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to talk about, because like I said, you've been breeding for 4 years. So, we want to give people tips, like if they want to come in and do what you're doing, have you ever experienced a male that didn't want to breed? And if so, what did you do to kind of fix that problem?
Yeah, absolutely. It's happened more than once. There's a couple things you can do. And there's a couple things you can do. There's also, you need to really make sure you know what you're doing before you try to do these things. So you can take a piece of shed from another male and throw it in the female's cage and then put a different male in to stimulate. He'll smell the male. Sometimes that will stimulate breeding behavior. But again, you need to be careful. I had an incident this past season where I pulled a male out. He had been breeding with a female. I put him in a tub that another male had been in to soak. And when I pulled him out, he was in full out battle mode. He smelled that other male. He was in full out battle mode. And I messed up and I put him back in the cage with the female, and he bit the hell out of that female. He damn near severed her neck. Like it was gnarly. She fortunately is fine. She got stitched up and she actually laid a perfect clutch. So it was all good. But like that's where for most people, especially if you're inexperienced with breeding retics, if you got a male that won't breed, my first inclination, honestly, normally would be, are you sure it's a male? Because look, there's a lot of snakes that get sold, that get changed hands. And like, I know for me, I check whenever a snake comes in, unless it's an adult. I mean, it's pretty hard to pop an adult male and verify it's a male. So one thing you can do just to make sure that you are dealing with a male is same sort of thing. Take a piece of shed from another male and put it on a hook, stick it into that male's cage. If it doesn't attack it, it's probably not a male.
Right.
Like, straight up. But yeah, I mean, you can cycle males in and out of cages. But again, like this is where, you know, the biggest thing I would tell anybody that's wanting to breed retics, get a mentor. Get a mentor. Get somebody that has done it, that has a track record of success, and that's not just going to blow smoke up your ass to try and sell you snakes. Like, and flat out, and this is not just in retics or in snakes, the way I've always found my mentors in anything in life is I found guys that were doing things that I wanted to do the way I wanted to do them, and I have paid them. Now, when it came to snakes, I found the guys that were doing what I wanted to do, and I bought snakes from them. I spent money with them, good money, so that I then had the ability to ask them questions. And from there, we would, you know, we developed relationships and, you know, became friends in a lot of instances. But at the same time, like if you just come with your hands out to somebody, like it's not that people, like I give out information to people all the time. Like my DMs are always flooded with, yo, dude, I got this problem, or yo, my snake's doing this. And I always try to answer people, right? Because like I want to help people. At the same time, like when it comes to breeding retics, if I'm going to spend the time like really teaching you how to do it, like it's got to be a two-way street. And unless you're going to come clean and work for me for free, which is unlikely, the only real other way of compensating me for the time and knowledge I'm going to share with you is by paying me. And I get that goes, it's not just for retics or for snakes. That's anything in life, especially business.
Right. Well, you absolutely killing it, man. You know, your Instagram speaks volumes, you know, and I want to talk about that. You know, you could be humble, but right now it's time to kind of flex a little bit. So how does that feel, you know, knowing that almost 15,000 people want to see what you got going on?
Dude, it's a trip. It's a trip. Like straight up, like between Instagram and TikTok and Facebook, you know, I've had videos that have gone well, you know, into the multi-millions on views. You know, I've had content shared all over the world. Like it's a trip, man. Like, you know, social media itself is a trip, but it's super, like, it's honestly humbling. It really is that people care enough about what I have to say that they actually tune in consistently and to watch and to see what I'm doing. You know, and that's like, I try to give people information versus just like entertainment. That's the thing I have always tried to do with Wildfire is give people information, teach them something, let them learn something they might not hear or learn somewhere else versus just like, oh, zany entertainment. Like there's, and again, not knocking the guys that do that there's a place for all of it. I just, you know, I try to add value. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's still a trip to me. Like I said, when I'll post something and I look at it the next day and it's got, you know, 10,000, 20,000 views. And I'm just like, really? Like this many people give a shit about me and my snakes? Like it's a trip.
Feels good, man. That's what it's about, man. Giving that educational stuff. You don't want to be too sensational. You want to be a little sensational to get views, but you know, it's about educating people and giving them that information, man. And I think you're doing an amazing job.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Of course,
hey, you're not doing bad yourself. I think you got more views on YouTube than I do, so you're doing something right, man. Keep doing it.
Hey, man, I appreciate that. Man. Now I gotta have a little fun, man. I'm gonna give you a hot seat question.
All right.
So you're breeding snakes, right? And you have a lovely wife. So my question to you is, this might get you in the hot water. Have you ever wanted a snake for a project and you told your lady, like, baby, I really need this retic for a project. It's only $1,000, but it's really like 4,000.
No, I don't lie. I do not lie to my fiance, point blank, period. If I'm not really in a mode right now of buying too many snakes. I've got the majority of the genetics and the morphs that I want. There's one or two things out there. But I mean, recently, I've been bringing in a lot of that locality stuff. And no, I'm dead out honest with her. Like, hey, like I have an opportunity to get this animal. This is why I want it. This is why I need it. And I'm getting it. She and I are not in our relationship is not, oh, hey, can I do this? It's, and this was something when we first got together. She's terrified of snakes. Like she used to not physically be able to walk in the building without like shaking and crying. Like it's legitimate. She had some really bad experiences with snakes when she was a kid. Like she has a legit phobia. And I straight up told her when we first got together, I said, listen, I will never ask you to work with me. I will never ask you to be part of it. I will never ask you to do anything with it. Just don't tell me that I can't. That's it. Don't ever tell me that I can't. And she's like, done, deal. And so the snakes we do pretty much everything together. Like, we are not just partners in terms of being lovers. Like we're business partners. She works with me in all my other businesses. We spend the majority of our days together. The snakes are the one part where she's like, see you, babe, love you. And I go do my thing. So, and that's honestly, I feel like that's important, right? Like some guys got hot rods in their garage and that's what they do, right? That's their hobby. That's their thing, their zen. Other guys got bowling league, whatever they might be. I got a bunch of big ass snakes and that's my thing.
I love it, man. I love it, man. Doesn't it feel good just to have a spouse that supports your dreams?
You broke up there for a second, bro. What'd you say? I'm sorry.
I said I'm in the same boat as you. My wife supports my dreams when it comes to the snakes. I said, doesn't it feel good to have a wife or a person that supports your dreams?
Dude, it's life changing. It's life changing. I couldn't do everything that I do without my fiance. Point blank. I run 3 different businesses outside of Wildfire. Without her, I couldn't do it. I could not do it. She's my right hand in everything I do. And yeah, she's absolutely my biggest cheerleader and my biggest support system. And look, like I'm a pretty motivated dude, like pretty disciplined. I'm pretty good at, getting up every day and getting done what needs to get done. But look, I'm human. I have my days. And when I have my days, she is that person that's behind me. Like, no, you got this. Like, come on, you are good. Just keep going.
That's what it's about, man. Like I said, man, you gave us an amazing hour. I definitely want to get you back on down the road and get around too. You have so much knowledge when it comes to retics. So I just want to say thank you for coming on my podcast, hanging out with us for an hour, just talking animals, talking your life. Your life is insane, man. I love it.
Thank you, man. No, it's for real. It's a privilege to come on and talk to you. I'm happy to do it anytime. So,
and before you go, man, I'm not a man of big means. Let's say I'm poor, but let's say, for IG follow, let's say I send you a beautifully potted flower, a couple bags of M&Ms, and a couple bags of Skittles. Can I get an IG follow, man? Can I get that follow back?
Oh, bro, you don't got to send me anything. I'll follow you back. You don't got to send me nothing. Not a thing. No, not a thing. Look, and here's the thing. And you can ask anybody else. I am notoriously bad at following other people on any of my socials, whether it's my personal IG, my Wildfire, Facebook. Like I get overwhelmed with it, dude. And I literally, between all of my different platforms, like if I sat down and tried to go through and like refollow, because and look, some people say, well, that's kind of an asshole thing. I won't follow everybody that follows me. Like I don't. If I did that, I'd never see any of the stuff that I want to see. And so I am notoriously bad at going in and clicking and looking and seeing who's following me and following people back. But no, I got you, bro. I'll do it right now as soon as we hop off here.
Amazing hour, man. Amazing. Hey, Deranged, man, what's up? More Retics, what's up? He said, look at that. How does it make you feel? Before we get out of here, one of my favorite retic breeders. Look at that.
Dude, I sincerely appreciate that. Like, truly, like it's humbling, dude. Like, the fact that someone appreciates what I am doing, that's also in the industry, that appreciates what I am doing enough to say that. So thank you. Truly, that's huge.
Amazing hour, man. I'm gonna let you get out of here. Thank you so much. We're definitely getting around too. I appreciate you, man. Much love.
All right, man. Have a good one. Take care.
Awesome podcast, man. Kurtwood, thank you so much, brother. Much love. The man's life is insane, man. So make sure y'all go check out Wildfire Retics. I love talking to the man. The man has so much knowledge when it comes to snakes, and just his life, man. Like I said, it was gonna be an interesting podcast. So until next time, man. This is Big Reptile Talk. Make sure you go check out our sponsors, Ozzy Boys, Venom-Proof Cages. If you're still here, head over to the Iron Animal Show. I think they're on my Animal House channel right now, but go check out their podcast. This is Big Rep. Man, I'm still like, because it's a good podcast, man. Definitely fun, man. That's a good brother right there, man. I'm glad he's doing some incredible things. Big Reptile Talk. Next time we bring some more heat, man. We out of here, man. Peace.